Hello friends, welcome back to our channel The Code Talk. So guys, today we are going to discuss about Python, right? So we will look into what is Python, right? And why Python is being used, why we should learn Python, right? So to understand that, so basically we know that Python is a programming language, right? So before we jump into Python directly, let's just understand that what is a programming languages, right? And you know that there are various programming languages, and which supports various programming styles, right? So in programming language, we will first try to understand what are those programming styles, and then we will look into what programming style is supported by Python, right? Now, a programming language in computer science is basically of two types, right? So first is object oriented programming, right? So many of you must have heard about it, right? First is object oriented programming, right? And second is functional programming, right? Functional programming. So let's start with this object oriented programming, right? So what is object oriented programming, right? So object oriented programming basically works on the concept of class, right? So what is a class? So class is a box, or we can say like class is a container which contains data members, right? So your class in object oriented programming will have data member, plus it will contain some operations, and we call that as methods, right? So you can just use these methods to perform some operations on these data members, right? So this is basically a class. So when I have to use this class, then how do I use it? I achieve that with the help of object, right? Now what is a object? Now this object is basically an instance of the class, right? Instance of the class which we create, right? And now through this object we will basically call the data members, call the methods, and we will perform the operations on the data members. So this is how basically a class works, right? Now in object oriented programming style, a particular class will support various features, right? So what can be those features? Those features can be we have polymorphism, right? And we have inheritance as well, we have encapsulation as well, and abstraction. There are a variety of principles which object oriented programming supports, like encapsulation. So as we have learned about the class, right? So encapsulation itself, you can say that a class is implementation of encapsulation, because it is binding of the data member and methods. So this is nothing but encapsulation, right? So this is basically what object oriented programming and how it works, right? Now if we go to functional programming, right, if we try to understand what a functional programming is, then how it is different from object oriented programming. So here the first statement I make is the functions in the functional programming are treated as objects, right? Functions itself are treated as objects, right? So what does that means to say? Like if we can pass parameters to a function, right, and if function itself is being treated as object, then certainly we can pass function itself as parameter to another function. That means to say, if I have a function f1, right, and then definitely I can pass another function f2 to this, right? So I can make a call like this. This is very valid in functional programming, right? So if I can pass a function as parameter, then another thing which I can do is I can return function as parameter, right? So like if I have a function f1, if I'm writing this function, okay, and I perform some operation, and at the last if I want to return something, then here I can return function as well, right? So this is also very valid in functional programming, but this is not the case in object oriented programming, but I can do this in functional programming. So another thing which functional programming says is it supports strong immutability, right? So what is that? It supports strong immutability. What does that means? What does immutability means, right? So let's just talk a bit about immutability, right? So now let's say I have a string s1 and I'm storing some value inside that string. Let's say s1 is equals to Google, right? Now what does that means to say? That means to say that s1 is a reference variable which is stored inside heap, right? Now if this is my heap, right, then this reference variable is pointing to a memory location which is storing this value Google, right? Now if I come and if I change this string, like I change it with the Yahoo, I assign it Yahoo, okay, then what will happen, right? Then a new object will be created in the heap, right? Say here a new object will be created and which will store the value Yahoo, and this reference variable now start pointing to the new object. So the memory location is changed, right, and the object is changed. A new object is created. Basically the previous object will be later on collected by the garbage collector. This will free the memory, right? So this is immutability. That means to say that original object is not changed, right? A new object itself is created. Now there are multiple classes in any programming languages which supports which are immutable or mutable, right? So that means to say the objects of those classes can be modified, or a duplicate object is created or not whenever we perform any action on that, right? So this is a brief about object oriented programming style and functional programming, right? So now coming back to Python. Now which programming style Python supports, right? Now Python supports object oriented and functional programming, both, right? So that means to say Python is a programming language which supports object oriented programming as well as functional programming. It means it enjoys the features of both of these programming styles, right? So that is the one thing, right? And coming back to the features, right? Let's look into the what features Python offers, right? So talking about the features of Python, so the first statement I will make here is which is the one of the primary feature of Python is very easy to learn, right? It's very easy to learn. Why? Because Python has English like keywords. Okay, how? Let's say I am writing some code. I say you to print hello world, right? And you write that code in C#, right? Then what you will have to do is you will have to create a class, right? Something like that, public class C1. Then you will open it with curly brace, right? Then you will have a main method, right? This is your main method, right? And inside that what you will do, you will write console dot write line, something like that, and in this write line you will say that print hello world for me, right? So this is how you will write a typical hello world program in C# console application, right? But if I say you if I ask you to write same program in Python, right, then how can you do that? So in Python you can just say that print hello world for me, print hello world for me, right? So this will solve our purpose, right? So you don't have to write whole these complex syntaxes, right? You don't have to write the bunch of code lines, right? So you just have to call this method which is print. This is English like, as I said, Python is easy to learn because it has English like keywords, right? So you know that you have to print something, you can use the print method. So you can just skip creation of this class, right? You can skip this syntactical curly braces, right? You can omit that. You can skip this semicolon, so you don't have to worry about these complex syntaxes, right? All you have to do is just write one line that print this for me, right? So your purpose is done, right? So Python is quite easy to learn, right? So second feature if we look into is, in Python there is no compiler. Like in other programming languages we have compiler, right, which compiles our code, and we get to know about like what are the errors or syntactical errors are there in our code. But in Python this is not the case. Here we don't have compiler, but in Python we have interpreter, right? In Python we have interpreter, right? So Python is basically an interpreter based language, right? So third feature if I talk about is, then Python is platform independent, right? Python is platform independent. What does that means to say? That means to say you don't have to worry about whether you are working on Windows operating system, right, or you are working on Mac, right, or you have a Linux. Python libraries are cross compatible with any of these operating systems, right? So you don't have to worry about which platform you are working upon. You just need to have the Python setup installed on your machine, right? So next is, Python is dynamically typed. So what does that means to say? If I say Python is dynamic type, right? So that means to say, if I ask you to, initialize some variable for me, right? So let's say I want to initialize integer, right? Integer variable in any Java or C# or C++ application. Then how I can do that? I will say that int a is equals to 1. This is how I will do, right? Or if I say that create a string variable, then we will write it like a string, the type, right? And then we'll write it like str is equals to whatever is my string, right? Google, right? So this is how we will do. But in Python you don't have to specify these types, right? So that means to say, if I write it like a is equals to 1, right? If I write a is equals to 1, then type of a will be integer, right? So a will be considered as integer type, right? Now if I come here and if I make it as say Google, right? If I write like this, okay, then what will be the type of a? Then type of a will be string. So that means to say you don't have to specify the type of variables in Python, right? So type is itself inferred from the value which you are assigning to the variable itself. So if I have to show you, like for example, this is my Python shell, right? So if I come here and if I say that say a is equals to 1, right? And then if I ask what is the type of a, right? So see here, type of a is int, right? And if I try to print a value of a, this is 1, right? Now if I come over here and I make it like, say this is Google, right? Now value of a is changed, right? You can say it's Google. And if I come here again and if I ask what is the type of A, right? Then you can say now type of A is string, right? So this is what the dynamic nature, right? So Python is dynamic in nature. That means to say it dynamically gets to know the value of the variable which you are initializing, right? So this is also one of the main feature. You don't have to write the complex code, you don't have to worry about writing the type, what is the type of your variable or your objects. You can just write the syntax to initialize variable or object. That's it, right? So another feature, moving on to the next feature, if we talk, is uh, Python can have, like you have a Python code file, or in Python we call it as module. Okay, in Python a module can have multiple classes, right? As well as you can have multiple free functions, right? That means to say we can have multiple classes in the same module, in the same code file, plus I can have free functions as well. Now these free functions doesn't belongs to any object, right? We don't need to invoke it through any object, right? We can just invoke that with the help of this module, right? So this is quite possible in Python, right? If I talk about any object oriented based language like Java or C++, is it possible? Then this thing is not possible, right? So we are getting this benefit from the functional programming, right? And this is what classes, this comes from object oriented programming, right? So yeah guys, these are the main features of Python, right? So it supports both object oriented and functional programming. So you can say that Python is a programming language, right? Python is a programming language which supports both object oriented as well as functional programming style, right? And it has various features, like it's easy to learn. We can use English like keywords, as I showed you over here with the example. And there is no compiler, right? Because there is no compiler, it is interpreter based, and so because of that it's quite fast, right? So since there is no compiler, so Python is quite fast. Your code execution will be quite fast in Python, right? And it's platform independent, it's dynamically typed in nature. We looked into that with the help of example, and you can have multiple classes and free functions, right? So because of these features, Python is extensively used these days. Right now you must be hearing a lot of about AI and data science, right? And although in all these fields Python is the choice. Why? Just because of all these features. We have all the support, and it's easy to learn. We can do a variety of stuff with just simple syntaxes, English like keywords, right? And with that's all. I will conclude this topic. So that's all about Python, right? So guys, if you have any question, then please comment below your questions. I will try my best to answer your questions, right? And that's it for today's video, and let's catch up in the next video with some with the next topic on the Python. Until then, take care guys. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel, the Code Talk. We will be continuing this Python learning series, and you will get some new videos on Python concepts, right? So just subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to click on the bell icon so that you get all the notifications whenever we create a new videos and upload on the YouTube. Yeah, that's it guys, take care, signing out.